Hey, welcome everybody. How you guys liking the new intro? Trying out some new stuff. This is going to be an introduction podcast, seeing as I haven't done one yet. So, for all of those that are going to be listening to this is the Rant Pod podcast. And I'm your host, Keith Green. Like I said, this is going to be an introduction. This is going to be me telling you who I am. And what is this podcast going to contain? What is it going to be about? What's going to be on it? And hopefully, what are the future progressions of what this podcast can be? So, I like that intro. I found that I have a track of beats and music that I have in my files, and I was able to import that in and get that all set up. That was kind of nice to have a little bit of extra stuff there. But how you guys doing today? I'm doing pretty good. I got my wife over here in the corner watching Netflix, which is what she does on a regular when she gets home now after work, which is pretty fun. And so, like I said, this is the Rant Pod podcast. And like I said, my name is Keith Green. I am married. I live in the state of Washington. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've been wanting to have a podcast where I can talk about things, where I could bring on people if I wanted to. And so let's just get a little bit into who I am and what I'm about. I am 30 years old. I work for a custodial company and got quite a bit of views on the world, and felt like I'd like to share them. I can talk for hours and hours, therefore I wanted to be able to put it on audio so people can hear it. Maybe they can get a laugh out of it. Maybe it can even cause somebody to think a little bit. I'm married to a beautiful wife named Grace. Like I said, she's over there in the corner watching me do this, and I love her a lot, and no children. So kind of got the best of doing different things right at the moment. But let's also talk about what this podcast is going to be. What is going to be on this podcast. And as you already figured out, it is called the Rant Pod podcast. Therefore, there will be ranting. There will be me talking a lot about different subjects, maybe even starting on a subject and moving completely off the subject onto other ones that may or may not tie into it, but somehow I may find a tie-in down the road. So this is going to be pretty much about anything and everything. I could see this being, as you saw from my first two podcasts, the very first one, the 20-some minute one, was a top 5 list of other, multiple different things that I like. The second one was about an hour long. That one was all about movies, which I may end up redoing because after listening to it, the volume is way too low. And also, the feedback I got on there was maybe a little bit more information on some of those movies. If you're looking to view any of them, you may want to look at who the actors are, what they're doing, the plot, everything about it. So I might do some more research and come back at you with that at a later time. So the anything and everything, like to me, some of the main things in my life that I like, obviously music, there's movies, there's books. We can even talk about politics. I got my wife here. We may end up talking about marriage. If we have a child, we'll talk about children. I'm a Christian, so we'll probably talk about religion. I don't force my opinions on anybody, or my religious views. But like I said, I am a Christian, and so you'll probably hear me talk about Christian-based things at times. I have friends and I have dream guests that I may end up putting on the podcast to either respond and or act towards questions I have, or even those top 5 lists that I may come out with and may bring up. So I might have those on there. In fact, I think one of my next podcasts I'm going to have Luke Franzak. Shout out to Luke Franzak. He's, if you notice my front picture on SoundCloud, the person sitting in the truck next to me is Luke Franzak. He's one of my best friends. And, I may end up having a phone call with my mother. My mother is once I get into talking about books, I like to talk to my mother about books. She's a huge reader. She reads about everything, reads anything and everything. She reads fiction, nonfiction, mystery, suspense, romance, you name it. She reads it. When she goes to the library, she picks up like 15 books, and now in the latter years, she's kind of toned down, but I remember she could pick up like 10, 15 books and have them done in almost like a week. And so that was kind of a highlight of growing up. But on the contrary, if you want to talk to her about movies, she does have her favorite movies, but if you ever want my mom to fall asleep, put on a movie, set it in front of her, she'll fall asleep. Put a book in her hand, and she'll be awake for hours. That's just how she rolls. Politics, if I talk about politics, it's going to be from a standpoint of logical reasoning. I don't claim to be a party, so I have what most people would probably say as a conservative towards libertarian view set, but I'm not going to say I'm a part of any particular party. If I believe there's a candidate or there is a person that is fit for the office and their policies go along with mine, I will vote for that particular person. And also there's a whole bunch of things that go along with politics, and if I talk about politics, it won't be limited to, but Brent Henry is someone who I really enjoy talking to about politics. We talk for hours and hours. He's a very good question person. He likes to ask plenty of questions. But also, we might even have other people on that could talk about politics. I do talk from time to time with a young man named Jonathan Norrell. He's got a pretty good outtake on almost anything. He and I also like hip-hop music, and Jonathan and I work together from time to time. Really a fun guy to talk to about. He's got pretty much a little bit of knowledge about virtually everything. And that's me putting him over. Oh, another topic we may talk about, wrestling and MMA fighting. When I say wrestling, I mean pro wrestling, as in the WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, New Japan, pro wrestling. You don't know those things, well then that's your sad state of affairs, because even though wrestling is a, quote, work, it's still fun to watch at times. And I enjoy it, especially the older stuff. I may get the WWE Network just so I can watch old stuff at one point. Any other things I may talk about? One thing I will not, and cannot talk about, and I'm going to say this right now, I do not want to ever talk about Kim Kardashian on this damn thing. I don't ever want to talk about Justin Bieber unless it's basically talking about your worst artist of all time. I am not a boy band fan except for two particular ones. And if I had David Johnson on here, who's my brother, he might even argue New Kids on the Block. But NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and New Kids on the Block were the only decent boy bands ever to exist. After that, One Direction and everybody else, a bunch of crazy lunatics. At any rate, like I said, this is the Rant Podcast. I just went on a rant for no frickin' reason whatsoever. By the way, there may be some swearing in here. I will try to limit it as much as possible, but I swear on a regular basis. So if you don't like swearing, maybe it's not the podcast for you. But I swear quite a bit, and I will endeavor to make sure that no one gets offended. Also, around movies, I like to talk. Everybody I talk to has their own selection of movies, and I may end up talking to, like, if I wanted to talk about comic book movies, I'll probably call up Mordecai Elmblad. Mordecai loves to talk about movies, specifically when it comes to Marvel/DC. Sometimes I talk to Brent about it. A lot of my other friends have a more serious take when it comes to films. And they don't really like the comic book films. They've never grew up reading the comic books, never liked them. David Johnson likes comic book movies. That's another one. David Johnson, Brent Henry, Mordecai, those are guys I talk to. No offense, Mordecai, but every single time I talk to him, each new Marvel DC movie that comes out is a 10 out of 10 for him. So Doctor Strange just came out not that long ago. I have not seen it, nor did I ever read the comic books, but apparently is the best of the best. And actually critics are saying it's a pretty good movie as well, which is something they hadn't said even about any of the other films. So that'll be fun. Also, along with moving on from movies, back at politics here, we do have a new president, Donald Trump, and apparently there is a very good portion of America that doesn't like the fact that he's in office. And the only thing I can say to that is suck it up, Buttercup. It's there, it's happening, and it could be worse. We could be going through Vietnam and having Richard Nixon, as president. So, you haven't lived through hell yet. Just remember that. Sorry for the pause there. Something just kind of had a minor glitch. At any rate, when it comes to Christianity, like I said, I am a Christian. I believe in the Word of God, the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. That being said, my views may be different than secular Christians. If I can, and will, like I said, there are definitely people that I would love to have on, and I would love to talk to certain people about religion. But with that as well, I'm not into getting into an argument about Christianity. I don't intend on bailing out on it. And so even though someone may not like it, like one of my, guests that I would love to have on here would be Joe Rogan. Now, I know he's not a big proponent on religion, thinks religion gives you a set of rules that you can't abide by, and, restricts people in certain areas. And that's not, and I don't know if that's his full outtake on it. I'm sure he probably believes that there are good things that can come out of different religions, but, there are certain things that if I talk to certain people, I will handle, them accordingly. As far as like guests that I would love to have on this podcast, if they would do the minor leagues of podcasting a service at all, would be people of this nature. I have one of my favorite podcasts is Adam Carolla, and I would love to get him on and talk to him. And that guy is a improv comedian. Got his start with Jimmy Kimmel coming up in podcast land or in radio. Moved on to syndication with a radio show called Loveline, and had some shows on Comedy Central, The Man Show, and some other crank yankers, and then moving on to taking over after Howard Stern moved to satellite radio. Adam Carolla moved on to morning syndication, and then took his syndication, left, and went into podcasting, and has been one of the number one podcasters in, really the podcast world. And he's been dubbed from different people the Podfather, take off the Godfather, whatnot. Another guy I would love to have on here is a man named Jocko Willink. He's a ex-Navy SEAL. He was a commander during the Battle of Ramadi in 2006 in the Iraqi War, and came out with a book called Extreme Ownership. It's a great book. I've read it, listened to it. I'm endeavoring to place things in my life according to it. It's about leadership. He teaches leadership, teaches about discipline equaling freedom, and he's got his own podcast as well called the Jocko Podcast, and a very good inspirational podcast, and he does book reviews, and that's on there. Another thing, like I just said, he does book reviews. That may be something that I do as well. If I read a book and I like it, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I may come on here and talk about it. I may talk to Luke Franzak. Luke Franzak and I love to read books and spar with one another on different books we're reading. And so I would love to get into that with anybody, and including Brent. Brent sent me a book here not that long ago. Haven't gotten into reading it yet, but I'm hoping to read it soon after I finish the one I'm on, if I ever finish the one I'm on. If you ask my wife, that's probably how she views it. At any rate. So another person, so I got Adam Carolla, Jocko Willink. I would love to get Milo Yiannopoulos on there, and I know that a lot of people do not like this guy. I think he's hilarious. He's currently right now on a college tour that he calls the Dangerous Faggot Tour, and it is hilarious. Big proponent for Donald Trump. He hates the PC social justice warrior angle of living that is basically taken over mainly college campuses and the media, mainstream media. We should tell you that not everybody has the same view as college campuses, and we should really look at how the colleges are handling students nowadays, because the students are literally being indoctrinated with crap from every which way, you know. So, yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos. I'd love to get wrestlers on here if I could, you know, like a Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's got his own podcast, or a Chris Jericho, you know. Two of my favorite wrestlers of all time were Roddy Piper and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And unfortunately, those two wrestlers have passed away. But they were great promos, which a promo is when a wrestler would have to pick up the microphone and sell their respective match, whether they were a good guy or a bad guy, which in wrestling terms is a baby face or a heel. Heel being a bad guy, baby face being a good guy. They had to sell it whatever way it was. They were two of the best guys on there. Love those two workers. But I'd love to get a couple of guys on there. Let's see here. Like I said, Joe Rogan, a comedian, MMA announcer, UFC analyst, great guy. Chael Sonnen. I love Chael Sonnen. I was going to say an ex-MMA fighter, but he actually just got signed back up with Bellator, so he's now currently an MMA fighter again. Podcaster and a news anchor at ESPN for MMA, and love his outtake on things. He has a very logical perspective. That's another thing you're probably going to find in here. Emotion is fine and dandy as long as it's kept in perspective, and you may find a lot of my views kind of harsh and straightforward, but it's because I'm looking at a lot of things logically, and I endeavor to look at them logically rather than look at them based on my own feelings and emotions, because once you start basing everything on your own person, it's all about you. It's all about you, and we live in a society, in a world with more than one person and more than one opinion, and you got to look at what are the best scenarios for everybody, and that can be for anything. You get entitled to have your own opinions when it comes to your personal life with music, books, movies, and Christianity, even your own politics. But if you're talking about what would be best for everybody in the long run, you kind of got to revamp your style a little bit. Also, let's see here. Another person, I'd love to get Bill Burr on here. He's a comedian. Gabriel Iglesias, another comedian known as the fluffy guy. That would be great. Hell, I would even like to get like a couple of even ladies on here to get different perspective. Like I said, I was going to have my wife come on here, maybe even her, get a couple of her friends, and like just ask women questions about life. Ask them, this is a guy talking here, and so most of my perspectives may even seem like, oh crap, here we go. We got another glitch going on here. I don't understand what's going on, but apparently my audio thing is having a glitch from time to time. We'll see how that sounds in the long run after I play it back. But at any rate, this is the Rant Podcast. I'm just going to go with the flow. It may start, may stop. I'm not working with high-tech equipment. I'm just starting. I don't have syndication. I haven't got money coming in or anything like this. So, and it's also getting started. This is only number 3, so bear with me here, people. May talk a little technology, with like Brent, Jonathan, Luke, David Johnson. I may even interview some of my friends just to ask them about how their life was growing up, what they're like. I got a pretty interesting background. At one point, I might give a full-on background of my life. And maybe some people might like that. Maybe some people won't. I got a lot of stuff I could talk about, a lot of stuff I could say. And I don't think that I should be limited because some people may or may not like it. But at any rate, currently right now, like I said, we are about a week and a half into Donald Trump as the president-elect. He'll be sworn into office come January. We got a lot of people protesting out there. We got all sorts of fun stuff going on in here. My next podcast, my next round of things that I'm going to be going after is I'm going to try and do a top 5 of different genres of music. I like different musics. I like different styles, different genres, different types. I'd say the only thing that there's 2 types of music I absolutely despise: techno music and country music. I can't stand country music. It is literally like just put my hand in a blender would be better than listening to anything country in my mind. It's fucking ridiculous. I hate it so much. It stopped being good when Garth Brooks stopped singing full time. And I know he just got back out there and he's starting to do a thing here or there or two. But once he stopped really hitting it hard, country just turned into shit. Kenny Chesney sucks. Blake Shelton sucks. All of them suck. Carrie Underwood, single-handedly in my mind, ruined country music with her damn cheating song when she was talking about jacking up a four-wheel drive truck. Yeah, when Brad Paisley started making country into jokes, But country in general has been a joke, so not a big, change up there. At any rate, and you may think, well, my styles of music, the stuff that I like isn't all that, could be laughed at and joked at too. And all of it can be, but I think overall, if I like almost everything else and I hate that, I think I've got something going fine with me. Let's see here. I may talk about different TV shows that I'm into and that I'm watching. My favorite TV show of all time is NCIS, and I know somebody may say, oh, that, old people shows, blah, blah, blah. Well, sorry, but the new comic book TV shows, even though they're very popular, are boring as fuck. So, I loathe watching another season of Green Arrow. I mean, where he just basically does parkour and shoots a fucking arrow. And Flash, where we see him literally on like a treadmill running down a street. It's CGI all in the background. You know, Supergirl, great, whatever. Legend of Tomorrow, who gives a shit? I may end up watching some of them at one point, but currently right now I watched 3 seasons of 3 seasons of Arrow, and I watched 2 seasons of Flash, and I had my fill. How they should be doing it, how they're doing it the best is just come out with a movie every once in a while, and that will be perfectly fine to have, you know, a comic book character formed into a movie where it comes out, where you have a movie like that come out every 6 to 8 or 10 months or a year, whatever. It's not so saturated every week. There's so many comic book TV shows, it's just ridiculous. Marvel and DC are making so much money. That in between Comic-Con. Hell, I might even do live podcasts where if I like go somewhere, you know, if I go to like a car show or a gun show. By the way, I am pro gun, so if that hinders you from listening to my podcast too, then go ahead and move on. You reserve the right to listen to whatever you want to, and I also have reserved the right to tell you to just ignore my stuff. And if you're going to be a bitch about it, well, then fuck off. At any rate, and I don't mean that in a harsh way. I just mean that in it's like you can just ignore it, walk away, leave it. You don't have to sit there and, you know, hack it to pieces. But if you're going to, I also reserve the right to give you a piece of my mind as well. There, we understand one another. Grace, you got anything to say? No, she doesn't have anything to say. She's beautiful. She's a beautiful wife. I love her so much. She's smiling. She's happy. I'm enjoying my coffee. I know it's probably not appropriate to drink on a podcast, but it's my podcast. Deal with it. Anyway, what's that?
At least you're not drinking beer.
Yeah, I'm not a beer drinker. I'm a coffee drinker wholeheartedly, altogether. Live by the coffee, die by the coffee. I think the only 2 things I'll want is a picture of me and my wife buried with, and a Woods coffee cup. That's probably be what I will be buried with when I die. My 2 things to be buried with.
I don't want to talk about it.
And Grace doesn't like the fact that that her picture has to sit alongside a coffee cup. At any rate. Well, I think that's a good introduction podcast. You kind of got the idea. I could go on for another long period of time here with what and all I'm going to talk about and get into and deal with. But I'm not going to go any further. I think I got a pretty good handle on it. So, everybody, welcome to the Rant Pod podcast. If you like it, that is wonderful. I'll be happy for anyone who listens. If it's 1, 5, or even into the thousands, that would be a wonderful idea if I could get into the thousands. Even the hundreds, even the tens of, if I could get even 20, that would be amazing in my mind. But the 20 people that would actually want to listen to me rant and talk and BS about everything that I have in my mind. So, until then, I will catch you guys down the road.